On D-Day's 50th anniversary, events live from Normandy in a special 5-hour broadcast. We'll hear from World War II veterans and President Clinton as they honor the soldiers who gave their lives in the name of freedom. Plus, veteran war correspondents Walter Cronkite and Andy Rooney, coming up on CBS this morning.
The U.S. and Britain had long planned an invasion of occupied France, codename Overlord. Allied Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower had his orders: invade and defeat. Their target, a tiny strip of French coast. 5 beaches the Allies called Sword, Juno, Gold, Utah, and one that would be forever known as Bloody Omaha.
We were given sort of a God-given opportunity in this little space of good weather, of which the Germans knew nothing, it turned out later, and I said yes.
Joining us at CBS News World Headquarters in New York are 2 guests who will provide a little context and perspective into the D-Day anniversary. Ken Jackson is a war historian at Columbia University here in New York City.
And Mort Gladstone, a navigator in the lead plane of the 1st Airborne Army, which dropped the first paratroopers behind the German line, signaling the actual start of the invasion. Tell us, Mr. Gladstone, Captain, about that experience that day for you.
Well, I was 22 years old. The reason I'm mentioning that age is because it was a lot of responsibility. We were selected to lead the invasion. I learned later there were over 800 planes behind us.
As you're talking, we want to make note that we're looking at live pictures now of the ceremony at Point du Hoc, France, where we will be carrying some live coverage momentarily with the arrival of President Clinton. In the meantime, it was your responsibility then to signal the others that this invasion was to begin and the paratroopers were to drop, right? I
signaled the actual physical invasion because the first paratroopers, the first Allied troops that landed in France, were from my plane.
Captain Gladstone, you visited that cemetery at Normandy 3 years ago, but you made a conscious decision not to go to France for the commemoration ceremonies. Why?
It was a very moving experience going back to Normandy, and I felt that twice in a lifetime, once being over there and once going back 47 years later, was a very upsetting, as I say, traumatic experience. And I decided that with my life I'd like to do something about the scourge of war rather than just giving lip service to being against war. 47 years ago, I joined an organization called the World Federalists, which is presently headed by John Anderson, who ran for president. Founded by Norman Cousins many, many years ago, and its international president is Peter Ustinov. And the idea of this group is to fight war. As a matter of fact, their 800 number is 1-800-HATE-WAR, H-A-T-E-W-A-R. And their thrust is international meetings and organizations like the United Nations and strengthening the United Nations so there'd be world peace through world law. And they talk about an international court of justice, a standing UN police force, so that there would be a formal strength to the United Nations to put down brush fires before they occur. And I'd rather work towards goals like stopping war or international wars by creating the structure for peace. And that would include, as I said, an international court of criminal justice where you could try an aggressor, try a terrorist, or try a polluter of the seas, for example, the law of the seas and things like that. And it's very difficult to keep a concept, an intellectual concept, alive for 47 years. But emotionally, I got tied up with the cause because, as I say, not only did I live through it, but I lost some relatives and close friends in the war. So I decided if I could do anything in my life, I'd like to do work for that type of organization.
You're live with CBS News Up to the Minute, and we are continuing our live coverage of D-Day ceremonies with the Point du Hoc ceremony in France. About the controversy over President Clinton's avoidance of service in Vietnam, and you see him leading these commemoration ceremonies here. Do you have any ambivalent feelings about that?
I think I have a feeling of understanding. I think possibly World War II was a much clearer picture of controversy and clearer black and white approach to why we're at war. I think possibly as a young intellectual he might have had ambivalent feelings. Getting more and more respect for the man, and frankly, because I could see how that could occur where there isn't a clear controversy of why we're at war. I could see why that could be difficult for somebody who is looking for a better world, a united world, a world at peace, a world based on law. And you're talking about Clinton and his wife and other kids who went to Oxford who are trained in the idea of law being the answer. World peace through world law, for example, is a basis of an understanding that even Eisenhower many times in some of his speeches talked about, that there should be a world at law, there wouldn't be a world at war. Think of that, and I can understand it.
Mr. Gladstone, this is a big question. I know to have you answer, but how would you say your war experience, D-Day and beyond, affected the man you later became and who you are today?
And I've spent my life, and it's really changed myself around to the point that I want to do something about it, because the decimation and desperation of war shouldn't continue, and there must be a way. If we can invent mass methods of nuclear bombs and so forth, we should be smart enough to invent the way to world peace.
Live with CBS News up to the minute, and we are continuing our live coverage of D-Day ceremonies with the Point du Hoc ceremony in France.